good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to the third installment in my I've watched almost every Humphrey Bogart movie series. Now, we have so far gone all the way from the miscellaneous cameos, the deleted scenes, the archive footage, and the live staged play television adaptation, and of course, a few of the lower movies on the list. If you add all those together, we've gone from 80 all the way to 61. Today's episode, we will be counting down from 60 all the way to 51. Now, because we are higher up on the list, well, lower up, lower on the list, I guess you could say, but the lower on the list we go, the better the movies are. That's why this is a ranking system. And of course, as usual, I will talk briefly about why I like these movies, give you a general vibe of what the movies got going for it, and why these movies are, where they sit with me. Hopefully that makes sense. And without further delay, let's get into it. And in case you are wondering what the previous titles were from the other videos, I will go all the way from 80 down to where we end today at the end of today's 10 segment countdown. So stay tuned for that in case you are curious. Like, okay, what has he mentioned in the previous videos? Obviously, I still would recommend watching those. That way, you can hear an actual description of each of those and where they sit with me, why they sit there with me, and what exactly, in a rough generalization, they are. But here we go. We start the countdown today at Virginia City, one of the few Western movies, other than The Oklahoma Kid and A Holy Terror. This is the other Western Bogart did. Now, this actually is a pretty good movie, not necessarily because of Bogart. The reason it ranks so high with me is it's a very inspirational story. It's based on a true story, although the characters and a lot of the accounts are fictional. The general idea of the story really did happen, and it takes place right around the time that the Civil War was nearing its end. The Confederates, the Yankees, of course, were in a dispute and they were getting close to the war. They were short on funds. It seemed like it could go either way. They were desperate to get money. Now, there was a place where they could get this money: gold bricks in Virginia City. Errol Flynn is the star of this movie, and he does a fantastic job. He was a big actor from back in the day. He's sort of like the Yankee spy who sort of became arrested, became a crook. He's a bit shady, but he's also charming. He falls in love with this woman who has allies to a Confederate guy that has been a lifelong friend of hers since childhood. So Bogart actually has a very small role in comparison to this. He has a pencil thin mustache and he tries to basically play a Mexican bandito, which I could understand why he felt outside of his comfort zone. He doesn't sound quite like a Mexican. However, if his character had been somebody who had been down south, maybe Texas, half Mexican, half American, but like a Texas American, would have seemed a little more realistic because it didn't quite sound like a Mexican accent, but it did sound like somebody further down south, maybe Texas, which that's what I would say is the flaw with this character. As far as how his character was as the bad guy, he played that part of the character very well, though. It was actually very entertaining and enjoyable to see him in this role because it's so different. Like I say, that's kind of the flaw with the criticism of his acting. Didn't really sound like a Mexican accent, but I think it would have been better if they had just made his character like a Texas bandito who was like half Mexican leading Mexican bandits because they had actual Mexican bandits, right? But him being the leader, he didn't really seem that Mexican. But he was still very good in the role as far as playing the antagonist. very good in that sense. Errol Flynn was very good as the hero, very charming. And that's why overall it is a pretty good movie, but I could understand Bogart's critique of it. I could see why this wasn't really the biggest movie, although it is kind of remembered as a classic for what the story was, for Errol Flynn's performance, and overall it still is a pretty damn good movie, which is why I put it at 60. For 59, we have Isle of Fury, one of Bogart's first early lead roles. This is really early. This is like 1936, like around the time he did The Petrified Forest. He almost gets killed by an octopus underwater, which the people think it's like some sort of underwater demon or devil. This one guy saves him. There's sort of a crooked treachery going on with somebody trying to arrest him, a shady captain, because Bogart and his wife and the crewmen on the island, they basically get married. Then him and his crew that mine for pearls under the water, they basically help this one guy and his captain escape from a shipwreck that is getting washed out in the storm. The guy turns out to be very good. He saves Bogart's life, the main supporting actor, but the captain is actually shady and he wants to turn them both in for a reward, and he's kind of a crook, and it leads to murder, disputes, and overall it's a pretty good movie. The quality of this one wasn't really the greatest. Maybe they didn't have the best cameras, maybe it was very low budget. Maybe whoever uploaded it just uploaded it in very choppy, not so good quality. But overall, the story was pretty interesting. Bogart was pretty good in this. Once again, he had a mustache, which was kind of funny. You don't see him that often with the mustache. Usually, he was very clean shaven, but it was funny to see him with it again. And overall, I do think it is a pretty good movie. I think that for an early lead, Bogart was quite good, and especially as like the newly wedded husband. He was very charming. You could understand why the lady fell for him. And if Bogart had not been in the picture, the one thing that kind of added a bit of drama to the story was the fact that the new mate of that boat that had almost washed up to save Bogart's life from the octopus, um, actually probably would have fallen in love with that guy instead of Bogart if she had met him first. But overall, it's a very good story. I liked it, and yeah, that's why it sits at 59 for me. Next, we have Racket Busters. This is where we start getting into the gangster era of Bogart's career, where he was typecast as gangsters in almost every role they gave him with Warner Brothers Studio. He was pretty good in this one. He was the boss. Like, really, he was the only memorable thing about this movie because the rest of the movie was quite forgettable. The final fight scene where he's brawling with this guy of a trucking company, he was like trying to hustle after several people have been killed trying to break up the rackets. Bogart's like trying to put the squeeze on the people that are like against his rackets to keep the rackets running everything. It overall is a pretty good movie. It's just he did so many movies like this. There's just a lot better movies. But overall, like what I will say is without Bogart, this movie really would have been totally forgettable. It's his performance that is pretty much the only memorable thing about this movie, which is why I have to give credit where credit's due, and that's why Racket Busters falls in at number 58. Next, we have Crime School, an early role which features a collection of child actors, teenage actors, called the Dead End Kids, who will get mentioned in a later movie coming up because that's where they made their debut. And that's where you see they appear in quite a bit of movies around that era, several with Bogart, which I will mention those later on. This one in particular is a pretty good story for a big reason that Bogart actually isn't playing a gangster in this one. He's actually playing the sophisticated, you know, new prison warden who basically he's trying to make a difference in his community, help these kids clean up their act, teach them the value of discipline, trying to help these kids really, change their lives, reform themselves. And as playing a good, charming character who tries to identify with these kids. He's not harsh with them. He tries to really look after them, teach them the values of living a good life in society. He actually does an incredible job, and you wouldn't really figure him as this kind of figure for a movie normally, especially at that period in his career. He hadn't taken on many roles like this, and yet he does it so effectively, so flawlessly, that I think it already is at that point in his career starting to show that he's capable of a lot more than what the film studios were typecasting him as. Like, he was very good in this role, and he was a very believable character. Like, you could believe that he could relate to these kids because when he was younger, he was into some, juvenile delinquency himself, but he got his act together. He wanted to help other kids, see the light, make a difference in their lives. And as that, he was fantastic. So even though there's a lot better movies on the list, I did feel it was necessary to explain that this movie actually is one I have a copy of, and I really do like it. And if I was to rewatch it, I might even grow a bigger opinion of it down the road because I do remember from what I felt when I first saw it, it is overall a really good movie. So that's why it falls into 57. 56, we have Action in the North Atlantic. This is a wartime movie made around the time he did Casablanca. I believe he also did Across the Pacific that year. Um, Action in the North Atlantic is actually quite a good movie. It's long, it's over 2 hours long, it's very lengthy. But as far as like a wartime story, they're trying to get the supplies to the Allies. Bogart basically plays the first mate. He just got married when they docked into port after they get shipwrecked by the German subs in the beginning. And then of course the same Germans come back for them again, and this time they're actually able to defeat the Germans. During the battle, some of the crew members get killed, the captain gets injured. Bogart has to take the lead as the captain to lead them to, I believe it's either Scotland or Norway, somewhere in Europe, to get away from the Germans after they defeat them and bring the supplies to the Allies. Overall, it is a really good movie. Like, objectively speaking, it's a good movie. And is Bogart good in it? Yeah, actually, I would say he really plays his ass off. It's just, he's not really the lead in this, you could say, but he is a major role in this movie. I do think that if they had expanded a little more on his character, maybe got to shed a little more light on the romance part of his story, it might have ranked higher up on the list with me. But overall, it's we're still getting into the very good territory, the sort of very good tier of the Bogart rankings. So for 56, Action in the North Atlantic actually has a pretty solid spot, I think. There's just, obviously the further down we go, the better they get. So at this point, you can't even go wrong with what I've pointed out. Next, we have 55, China Clipper. This movie actually is very good. I'm trying to think of what his name is. I think it's Pat O'Brien. Let me look that up quick. Just so I don't mess this up. Yeah, Pat O'Brien is the main star of this. Now, it really is his movie. He steals the show, and he's quite good. Now, Bogart actually ends up socking his character a good one at one point because he's kind of being an asshole. Like, he's being very selfish and demanding. But he's trying to build this company up from the ground. His father had helped engineer some of the parts of these planes that they're calling the China Clipper. And then his father dies of heart problems. So he kind of wants to complete this mission and make sure that the planes work to honor his father's memory. Now, Bogart isn't the lead, but he's a crucial character in this because he's one of the test pilots. And despite all odds, there's a big tsunami and a storm going over China and the Philippines, and it seems like the flight isn't going to make it. And yet, Bogart, despite all odds, flies it through it and makes it. And it's a really great inspirational story. And I really love how Bogart presented the character in this movie. And of course, Pat O'Brien was really good in this role as well. He's actually done quite a few really good movies with Bogart. Usually, he kind of steals the show. He's usually the lead in these movies. But at the same time, I do think that Bogart's contribution to this movie made it even better. So, yeah, I think 55 is a reasonable place to put it. Next, we have a prison movie, San Quentin. Now, San Quentin is a really good prison archetype of a movie. This is another one with Pat O'Brien. Now, his sis, I think it's his sister, um, yeah, his sister. She's basically, getting chummy with the warden, who is Pat O'Brien again, oddly enough. And this kind of pisses Bogart off. At first, he's getting to the point where he might get out soon, but he attempts a prison break because he wants to go settle the score with the warden, who's like, basically he's not the warden, but he's like the first guard in charge kind of thing. And he like wants to settle the score because he doesn't like that he's getting special treatment because he's romancing the sister. Like, so he plans to go escape, kill him, manages to get there and confront him. And at first, he is about to kill him, but then he realizes that like it wasn't like that. He basically feels responsible. He has to basically he feels the need to go back and turn himself in. Along the way, he gets shot, almost dies, manages to make it right back to the prison before he dies. So he redeems himself right at the end. So overall, it's a pretty good movie. Obviously, there's better movies than this on the list, but overall, I couldn't really say much as far as critiques with San Quentin, because for a prison movie, Bogart really does an excellent job of playing his character. The supporting cast are also really good, and of course, Pat O'Brien as like sort of the first prison guard, warden kind of thing. He's uh he's very good in it too. So yeah, 54. Next, we have Across the Pacific, which has two of the same actors from a film that will come up later on the list. A few films actually, but these two, well, actor and actress in particular, were in The Maltese Falcon with Bogart, and they're also in Across the Pacific. Now, Across the Pacific is a wartime story. It's actually a pretty good movie overall because Bogart starts off as he's in the military, he's firing artillery shells, but he basically embezzles money to help a woman back home, gets caught, gets dishonorably discharged, but he's kind of still working for the government as like a spy. And like they're kind of paying him under the table to do stuff. He tries to enlist in Canada. They won't take him because of his shady American military record. So he plots on a trip to go across the Pacific. Now, along the way, he comes across Sidney Greenstreet's character, who somebody tries to kill. He basically saves Sidney Greenstreet's character, gets drunk, gets closer to him. A lot of drama. All the while, he's trying to charm this woman, who was the same woman as the Maltese Falcon. Hold on. What is her name? Just so I don't mess it up. Uh, just because he's worked with so many people, sometimes I forget the names. Mary Astor, that's it, right? So yeah, he's trying to charm her character. Basically, she's kind of getting forced against her will because they've got her father captive to help Sidney Greenstreet sort of with his operation. They're basically conspiring to lead a war against America with the Japanese helping out. They want to bomb the Panama Canal, all this stuff. And yeah, Bogart basically has to like step up, save the day. The part that makes this movie go as high up on the list as it does for me is the ending scene where he gets a Gatling gun and he's just mowing down motherfuckers like left, right, and center, like just taking them out. He takes them all out by himself with the Gatling gun, and it's pretty badass. It totally elevated the performance of the movie. And then of course he catches Sidney Greenstreet. He's a real lover of Japanese culture, and he's also has ties to the Philippines and all that. But he basically he knows he's caught. He's about to commit harakiri and stab himself, and he basically is like, Bogart, just shoot me. Like he tells Bogart's character, like, just kill me, put me out of my misery. They're gonna catch me anyway. And he's like, no, not before the military officials have a talk with you first. So he knows he's cooked. And he makes it seem like he is gonna still off himself, but he doesn't have the guts to do it without getting shot in the head. So that's pretty much where it ends. They capture him, take him into custody, and Bogart wins the girl. For a change, it was starting to move into that era where Bogey was actually starting to get the girls, which is pretty good. And then, yeah, so that's why Across the Pacific falls in at 53. Next, we have Dead End. A very memorable performance because this movie, in my opinion, actually could have been better for so many reasons. This is where I said the Dead End Kids kind of made their debut. This is where they're the stars. It's not really the greatest movie for that reason. Some of the supporting actors are pretty good. One of the actresses actually later goes on to appear in Key Largo with Bogart, where she puts on a much better performance, but she was still pretty good in this as Bogey's former love interest. Now, Bogart was on loan to MGM play this role, Babyface Martin. And he got critical praise for his performance in this movie because it elevated this movie from being very average and forgettable to a pretty damn standout movie and a stellar performance on his behalf because he's a gangster back in town, had plastic surgery to change his face. His mother at first doesn't recognize him once she knows it's him though. She's angry, she slaps him, tells him don't come around no more, and he was just trying to make peace with her. He was gonna give her money, all this, and she was so cold towards him, it like really broke his heart. He's all depressed. Finally, he gets one of his buddies to get the girl he used to mess around with back in the day, his first true love. He wants her to run away with him. Of course, she said that she's basically, got diseased. She's not the same. She's a problem now. Breaks his heart. He's angry, and he refuses to talk to her after a certain point because he's like in shock. He's so angry and upset, devastated that his true love betrayed him like that from back in the day, right? So he's just standing there and he refuses to look at her. And just with the facial expressions of anger and sorrow and loss and misery in his face, he says so much more than he could with words alone, just from his facial expressions, and it's amazing. Bogart was kind of a master of that, which you will see me talk about in other movies later on. Of course, his character eventually gets gunned down by the police. He throws a knife into somebody's back. There's some really badass good scenes in this movie, and I really did enjoy it. Now, there is a lot better Bogart movies, but the reason this ends up as high on the list as it does is because he took this movie that really would have been average and forgettable and actually turned it into something like special, remarkable, and memorable just for his performance alone. So, yeah, that's why it falls in at 52. Next, we have 51. Now, he plays another sort of henchman that basically tries to overthrow the great Edward G. Robinson's character, and he does succeed. There's a romance drama with him and his ex girl. Edward G. basically barely survives death, ends up in a monastery helping, the friars and monks there plant flowers, grow them to sell. Excuse me. And actually, it's a really good redemption story for Edward G. Robinson's character. He definitely is the lead, and he steals the show in this performance. Now, Bogart is sort of the underdog trying to take over, is ruthless. He's very good in that role in this particular movie. But he kind of does take the back seat to Edward G's story arc, like his tale of redemption, trying to redeem things with his love, knowing that he really did never treat her the way he deserved and she deserved better because he realized he loved her more than he first thought. He lets her go to a guy that she knows will love her more and decides to return to the monastery. Now, throughout the story, he learns valuable lessons about not being greedy, about simplicity sometimes is a better way to live. And it's just a really overall beautiful story. It kind of surprised me because I didn't expect Edward G to play a role like this so well, and yet he did. And like I say, with Bogart, Bogart definitely holds his own as far as being like the guy who's cutthroat and wants all the power. He definitely, it's the typecasting, but that's what I could respect about Bogart. Even when they were giving him a lot of the same roles, he still tried to bring something new and put his best foot forward every time. Which that's why he's my favorite actor, and that's why American Film Institution, AFI, considers him the greatest male cinema star of all time. Which, as you see, the fact that we have this many movies to cover, he's put on this many great performances thus far, and there's still 50 more to go, that's got to tell you something. So now, as we wrap up, we will start all the way back from the beginning and count up to where we are so that you know where we are, where we've come from, and where we will go next. Is the next episode will feature the countdown going from 50 to 41. But from 80 to 51, 50 to 41, and yeah, the countdown will basically so far has been from 80 to 51. So, yeah, we had the TV version of the Petrified Forest, the live play stage adaptation. We had 79, You Murderer, which is the Tales from the Crypt episode with archive footage. The Love Lottery, where he has an uncredited cameo. Two Guys from Milwaukee, which him and Lauren Bacall have uncredited cameos. Women of All Nations, where his scenes were deleted from the final cut. Body and Soul, and A Devil with Women, okay, so yeah. 77. You know what? Let me just redo. Okay. 80 TV version, 79 You Murderer, 78 The Love Lottery, 77 Two Guys from Milwaukee, 76 Women of All Nations, 75 Body and Soul, and 74 Devil with Women. Both of these I have not seen because unless you can find the original film reel in the museum, it's next to impossible. They have no DVDs or downloadable and streamable or watchable versions that I know of. So if anybody has such a way to watch these, please let me know because I would like to watch them in the future. Next we have Always Together, which he has a small part in as a father crying in the reflection of a window. According to what I've read, never seen it. They have the DVD version, and I do plan to watch it one day, but as of now, I have not yet. Getting into the countdown of what are the actual credited roles that I've seen, at 77, we have Midnight, aka Call It Murder, as it was re released and called after he became a bigger star. A Holy Terror, Swing at 71. 70, Swing Your Lady. 69, The Return of Dr. X. 68, A Love Affair. 67, Men Are Such Fools, sorry. 66, Thank Your Lucky Stars. 65, Bad Sister. 64, Two Against the World. 63, Up the River. 62, Big City Blues. 61, Three on a Match. And for today's countdown, we added 60, Virginia City. 59, Isle of Fury. 58, Racket Busters. 57, Crime School. 56, Action in the North Atlantic. 55, China Clipper. 54, San Quentin. 53, Across the Pacific. 52, Dead End. And 51, rounding off today's countdown with Brother Orchard. So, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Tomorrow we will get into 50 to 41, so stay tuned. After that, we're pretty much at the halfway point. So, I hope you enjoyed all these episodes so far. Hopefully, you will keep tuning in. And of course, feel free to leave comments. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do because it helps. Like the videos too, and share them if you like for any Bogart fans. But of course, feel free to comment too and just, tell me what perhaps your favorite Bogart movie is or what you like about Bogart. I think it's good, sort of, in paying tribute to his memory because that's who we're doing this for ultimately. It's a tribute to Bogart. So hopefully you all enjoyed this, and until next time, I'm your host, Super Kami Guru Alucard. Oyasumi Nasai, Matane, peace out, and here's looking at you, kid. Have a good day, everybody. Bye for now. Until next time, stay tuned because we're going to have even more intense episodes from here on in.